ladies and gentlemen, class of 2014, congratulations to you, your parents, your relatives, and thank you, each and every one of you, for giving me one of the finest gifts I have ever had. That gift is reminiscent of the year 2001, when I stood on this chair and gave the commencement speech for my son's graduation. Since that time, he has graduated from Merrimack College, been commissioned in the United States Air Force, and served 8 years, received his master's degree from Gonzaga University, has completed his first year of law school at the Columbus School of Law, a part of the Catholic University. But what Josh has done in terms of accomplishments for graduation, he has done much more for the world. So you see, in 2011, after serving in Iraq, he went back to be deployed at Afghanistan and founded Flying Scars, a non-profit agency built with he and several of his captains to ensure that the people of Afghanistan have economic independence and freedom, because Josh perceived that it was not just bombs and bullets. It's human beings achieving success. It is with great honor, pride, and privilege to introduce soon-to-be Major Joshua Carroll, your commencement speech.
Unlike my dad, I actually need an introduction, so thank you for that. Someone's going to say nice things about you, it might as well be a family member. Graduates, I get it. It's hot. I was in those seats 13 years ago, and I'm the only thing standing between you and your diplomas, so just give me 10 minutes of your time. Good afternoon, my fellow millennials. I doubt many commencement speakers can get away with saying that. And just to prove that I'm not too far removed from being in those seats, I'm going to capture this moment, just as your class president did, with a selfie. Okay, your turn. Go ahead. You earned it. If there's a selfie-worthy moment, it's today. I see some people didn't bring their iPhones. First world problems. I'd like to thank Principal McCullum, the members of the school board, Superintendent Forston, your senior advisor, Mr. Crockford, academic coordinator, Mr. Tucker. Given the kind of student I was there's much irony that I'm up here today. But of course, this moment is not about me. It is about you. And even more so, it's about this town and this community. Finally able to see the fruits of their labor, dressed up in graduation attire, taking selfies. While I do enjoy the occasional selfie, let it not overshadow our generation's legacy. The truth of the matter is that despite what some of the other previous generations may have said about us millennials, we have done some serious things. Just 3 months after I walked across the same stage while away at college, I watched 2 airplanes crash into the Twin Towers in New York City. Even as a young, naive 18-year-old, I understood the magnitude of those events. That day cast a dark shadow around the world and drastically changed my future. it wasn't too long after watching that event unfold that I knew what my profession was going to be. So too did many of our fellow millennials who raised their right hands so that others would not have to. Folks, it doesn't get much more serious than that. For the past decade, I have given the military some of the best years of my life, and in return, it has given me much back. I've traveled the world, led young men and women during war, and now I'm going back to school on the post-9/11 GI Bill. I thought that after I left active duty, I would sort of ride off into the sunset, move on to the next chapter of life, putting behind my experiences, but for maybe a box of medals to one day show my grandkids. Perhaps some of you had similar thoughts about putting Laconia High School in your rearview mirror. Unfortunately, that's not how life is. You can't always compartmentalize everything when you think you're done. No, instead, the places that we've been keep calling us back. And if we're brave and selfless enough, we continue to answer. In the military, whether you serve 4 or 40 years, you will always be a veteran. And with that comes responsibility. In a similar way, you will always be a sachem, now part of an alumni family, tied forever for this school and this town. For those like me who did not fully dedicate themselves in their studies, whatever shortcomings that you had, or whether you think you could have done more here, there is hope. You can still make the experiences of those who come after you, for your kids, your grandkids, complete strangers. That responsibility is yours. I'm still amazed at how much responsibility the military gave me at such a young age. It is a remarkable organization. It can transform a goofy, pitbull-riddled teenager from a citizen to a soldier, airman, Marine, sailor in a matter of weeks. Ironically, that reintegration process of many veterans back into society is not so easy. It's not so instant. I feel a heavy burden to continue to fight for my fellow warriors who now face the daunting task of coming home after a decade of war, of wounds both visible and invisible. Having seen their sacrifices, I knew that there was no way I could turn my back on them, and so I haven't. I mentioned the challenges that veterans face, not to dishearten anyone or put a damper on what should be a celebration of your achievements, but rather to remind you that we millennials have already left our mark. So don't think that you have to wait to grow up for people to take you seriously. They already do. By now, you're old enough to enlist yourselves, vote, pay taxes, buy a lottery ticket, sign a legally binding contract, get a tattoo. Okay, just to emphasize, those are things you can do, not necessarily should do. If you still don't believe in yourselves or that you're capable of affecting change, let me give you a few examples. I doubt anyone here has heard of Facebook, but in case you have not, their CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, he started it at 19 years old. His social media platform is now worth billions and has forever changed the way we socialize with one another. To give you an example of its far-reaching impact, I've been to remote villages in Kenya and Haiti where thousands had insufficient water supply, but still managed to have Facebook accounts. After a brief introduction, a frequent request that I got was not for another water well or for a microloan. It was to become Facebook friends. That's the new international language, and it was created by a millennial like us. 2 years ago, a Pakistani teenager was shot in the head by the Taliban for campaigning for girls' rights to be educated. Since then, that same teenager penned the autobiography, I Am Malala, and she is now using her fame to further girls' education by fighting for them to go to school. Malala is 16. And finally, in 2007, a platoon was ambushed on the side of a mountain in Afghanistan. After enduring 2 concussions and shrapnel to the face, Sergeant Kyle White kept firing his rifle to keep the enemy back and pulled wounded soldiers to cover during a deadly firefight that killed 6 Americans and 3 Afghan National Army soldiers. Sergeant White just recently received the Medal of Honor for his heroic actions that day at the ripe old age of 20. You are never too young to make a difference. Today you join a proud tradition of fellow sachems who have been difference makers. My mother, my father, my grandfather all graduated from Laconia High School, but not my great-grandfather. See, he only made it to the 7th grade, yet he saw to it to get his kids the education that he did not receive. So far, most of you have spent your entire lives in the Laconia public education system. The beautiful renovations here at LHS, the Hewitt Technical Center, the new science labs, and yes, this incredible multi-purpose athletic field, which will be used to beat Plymouth for many years to come. And if I'm not mistaken, Lebanon, I believe the girls have a playoff field, lacrosse game this afternoon. Good luck to you. This field was appropriately named after Coach Fitzgerald. I played for Fitzy, play being a relative term. Fitzy was an old school coach who was loved for his straightforward approach to the game. In fact, he was so old school, he thought the forward pass was a trick play. I'll always remember when we lost the state championship my senior year, Fitzy's last season coaching. After the game, he said to us, "I'm sorry we lost because of me. There's too much pressure on you kids." Even at his lowest, he was at his best. And watching him unfairly take responsibility for the team's loss forever cemented in my mind that leadership is not always winning with pride, but sometimes losing with grace. That was a life lesson for sure. One that I remember as much as the prelude to the Canterbury Tales in Old English that Mr. Crockford had us memorize. I'm actually just kidding. I don't remember that. But my point is that those who participate in extracurriculars probably didn't think of athletic fields or band rooms or drama stages as classrooms, but they were. In fact, to extend the metaphor, your entire upbringing has been one gigantic laboratory, and you were the experiment. The great renovations behind you exist because those who came before you saw the value in education and made it a priority. But even more so, they saw the value in you. So today, as you plan to embark on wherever your diplomas may take you, remember that you may have done the work, but this community, as far back as my great-grandfather, laid the foundation. My great-grandfather started off as a barber, served his community as a state legislator, and later went on to become a postmaster. Above all, though, he was a businessman who always sought to maximize his ROI. That's an economic term that stands for return on investment. As you can imagine, now that your teachers have educated you, mentored, and coached you, and working adults have spent their hard-earned taxpayer dollars on you, it's time for you to pay up. I, Laconia, we expect you to know some things, to get our return on investment in some form or another. So please, start thinking about your value proposition now. This diploma that you will receive today will open many doors for you. Trust me, all the opportunities that I have had have happened because of my high school diploma. I could not have gone to college without it, been commissioned as an officer in the Air Force, and so on and so on. Not to worry, from here on out, nobody's going to ask you about your GPA. Thank goodness, because mine, quite frankly, was embarrassing. But if you move out of town, they may ask you where Laconia is, and if they're from New England, you may say generally Lake Winnipesaukee, Lakes region, And when all else fails, just say Bike Week. Everyone knows that. Although Laconia will always be my home, in recent years, as a veteran and social entrepreneur, I've considered myself somewhat of a world citizen. In light of all the places that my travels have taken me, I have come to one undisputable conclusion. Talent is universal, but opportunity is not. Take it from someone who has absolutely zero talent and yet all the opportunity in the world. And it started from my parents who loved me unconditionally and raised me in this wonderful community. I've seen women in Afghanistan risk their lives sewing beautifully handcrafted scarves just to provide their children the opportunity that you have. I've walked with mothers in Kenya 6 miles a day while balancing 70 pounds of produce on their heads just to make a few pennies so their kids can go to school just like you. And I've taught alongside a group of teachers from a small fishing village in Haiti who built an entire school by themselves and worked for free just so their children could be educated like you. See, in these places, there was no public education system where everyone was guaranteed to go to school. So many of them were as talented, if not more so, than some of you today. Their biggest obstacle was not talent, it was opportunity. Don't take yours for granted. I've tried to make the most of my opportunities. I know that is in part because of my upbringing. See, I'm the son of a judge. It is my hope that not too many of you know him in that capacity. That's typically not a good thing. While he does sit in legal judgment, it is never personal. As an aspiring attorney, and even more so as a son, I could not ask for a better role model. And as a community, this town could not ask for a better man sorting out the complexities of justice. Whenever I see injustice, cruelty, or inexplicable evil, I try to see the world through the eyes of my dad, who is constantly subjected to some of the worst among us, but chooses to see the best within us. Remarkably, he hasn't let the crimes or civil wrongs that he sees day in and day out in his courtroom harden him. Instead, he continues to be a champion of seeing good and doing good. To see the world through my father's eyes is a beautiful thing. That is the world that I choose to live in. People have asked me why I try to be such a do-gooder, a label that is often used sarcastically. The simple truth is that if I didn't advocate for veterans or try to empower widows afflicted by war, natural disaster, and disease, I simply couldn't live with myself, not with the opportunities that I've been given. You'll find you get a lot of second chances at life. For me, I started as an arrogant, undisciplined, and undistinguished student here at LHS to someone who now stands before you, giving you advice. So if my message to you today has not been clear thus far, here it is as plainly as I can put it. The time is now. I've seen the terrible result of poverty, war, and inequality, but I find solace in knowing that the world doesn't have to be this way. We can do something about it. If we have an idea or a passion, we don't have to wait to do things just because people don't think that we will pay attention or because we lack experience. Experience is a misleading term. I would argue that virtually nothing I ever started off doing was founded on experience. So trust yourself. When my colleagues and I had an idea about microeconomic development while deployed to Afghanistan, we didn't ask some general if it was okay to empower local Afghan women or wait until we came home from war. We just made it happen right then and there. And at a time I thought, if I'm risking my commission, then so be it. Let the pieces fall where they must, because deep down I knew we were doing the right thing. So just like you are never too old to try something new, sometimes you're never too young either. Gandhi said, "I shall pass through this world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any human being, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not pass this way again. Graduates, the world is ready for you. It's time for you to explore it, learn from it, and live it. Be bold, be adventurous, and travel to places where you can make a difference. And in turn, my offer to you is that it will make you a better person. I know that it made me. Congratulations, class of 2014. It has been a great honor to be with you all today. Now I hope you will join me in making this world a better place.